got a group of people here together today to have a look at what is the science of happiness at work, how does it create high levels of performance and high levels of engagement, and how can organisations benefit from this groundbreaking research?
My name's Stacey Ashley. I'm actually based in Sydney and I work quite closely with Jane, who's based in Brisbane. We each have our own coaching and training businesses. We're both qualified coaches, executive coaches, career coaches. We're members of the International Coach Federation, and of course we both have long, corporate history behind us as well to give us the insight into what goes on for people in workplaces, because we've been there. Just by way, I guess, of background to the science of happiness at work, the work that we're going to be exploring today is based on the research conducted by the Eye Opener Institute in the UK. They're based at Oxford University, and it's an extensive piece of research over about 7 or 8 years that's led to the development of the science of happiness at work. The really interesting thing about the science of happiness at work is that when we go through it, you'll go, yeah, I know that. Yeah, I kind of know that as well. But what we're giving you is a way of taking that kind of common sense information, this is not rocket science, and turning it into a really practical application that you can measure the results on. And guess what? Everyone gets happy in the process. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. The other thing that makes this really, really exciting and important is there's a lot of research that shows the impact of having unhappy people who happen to work in your organisation. So there's a Sydney University Menzies Centre of Health research piece that shows that unhappy employees slice $20 billion off the bottom line of the Australian economy. 20 billion. There's another piece of government federally funded research around high performing workplaces that shows those workplaces that have really happy people working there are 3 times as profitable. So it's not just about, oh, this is soft and fluffy and we're feeling great. It actually has really tangible outcomes for a business. How this work fits for us is that because we do career coaching, we see the impact on individuals who maybe, they've lost the buzz of going to work, maybe they've plateaued, maybe they're really, really unhappy. But maybe it's just an uncomfortable feeling of, I don't really know what's wrong, but I'm just not feeling it anymore. But we also work in organisations, and so we can see the ripple effect that can create in an organisation. If you've got a group of people who are working as a team and everything's going really well, and then one person doesn't perform quite as well, or they're feeling unhappy, or perhaps they're getting a lot of criticism, or whatever it may be, it doesn't just affect the individual, it affects a lot of the people around them. So you have this cascade that happens in an organisation. So just a little bit of unhappiness can actually breed a lot of impact. What are they? What needs to be there, or what needs to be happening for you to be happy at work? Respect. Achievement.
Voice.
Having a voice. Recognition. How dull will it be if we didn't laugh? Yep.
Flow, where things flow.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yep. Where you get in the zone and it just happens, yeah?
I think consistency.
Trust, kind of important. Yeah, feeling valued. Good list.
Awesome.
Who wants to work there? Okay, so that sounds great, and sometimes those elements come into play, and it is great. But let's talk about happiness. There's a lot of research in this space. One of the leading researchers is Sonia Lyubomirsky, who is a professor and researcher at the University of California, and she looks at the whole of life happiness. And what her research has demonstrated, and it's been confirmed by a lot of other research, is that 50% of our happiness is innate. It's what we're born with. 10% is about our circumstances and our environment. So it's impacted by, what's going on for us. And then 40% is derived from what we do every day. That means that 40% you own. What do you do every single day? What are the places that you go to? Where do you spend your time? At work and at home. That's most of your time. Yeah, you might going out seeing friends and that kind of stuff. But 5 days a week, for most people, they're at work. So how much of an impact does that have on that 40%? Quite substantial. What I want to talk about is when we're referring to happiness, which part of happiness, because there's lots of types of happiness, we're actually talking about. There's emotional happiness, so a quick burst of, woo, that was great. State happiness, which is about mindset. It's relatively stable, but it is influenced by changes for you. Okay, so it is sensitive to change, a little bit of the highs and lows. And the third type of happiness is trait happiness, again, what we're born with. Yeah? And this is pretty stable across the course of your life. Yeah, it's pretty hard to change your genes. Okay, what are we talking about when we're talking about science of happiness at work? We're talking about this state happiness, your mindset. An example around what state happiness might look like and how you know where you're sitting. Hey, I've just won this fantastic deal. Do you think, wow, that's great, I'm really excited? Or do you go, oh my God, how am I going to deliver that? That will tell you your mindset. You'll get real insight into the reaction that you have to the circumstance. What's happiness at work? Happiness at work is a mindset which allows you to maximise performance and achieve your potential. You do this by being mindful of the highs and lows when working alone or with others, and achieve your potential. Sounds pretty powerful. The research shows us employees who are happiest, 180% more energised, 155% happier on the job, 150% happier in their life overall. That's the 40% coming into play. 108% more engaged, 50% more motivated, 50% more belief in their potential, and 40% more confident. That's some big numbers. Specific areas that the research has demonstrated are impacted directly by happiness, and you can measure in an organisation. There's 3 core ones that we look at. So comparing the happiest to the unhappiest employees. Staying in the job. So my intention to leave the organisation. We know that when somebody leaves the organisation, it costs a lot, typically. So if I'm the happiest, I'm going to stay with you. At the moment, I'm intending to stay with you for 2 years. If I'm unhappy, 12 months. So in terms of the tenure and the turnover, your organisation has a really significant impact. Sick leave. The happiest employees, on average, take 3/4 of a day out of the office, so being absent from the office. Unhappiest, 7 days a year. Doona days, mental health days, okay? And focus on task. If I am one of the unhappiest employees, I'll give you 2 days a week, 40% on task. If I'm one of the happiest, I'll give you 4 days a week on task. Over the year, that's about 100 days difference per employee. How does that impact productivity and profit and performance and so on? So that's the background. I'm going to hand over to Jane. Jane's actually going to take you through the model that was developed out of the findings from the research.
been working with them for the last year, and working with their team leaders and business leaders, and it's really interesting to see some of these things where you go, yeah, actually I kind of intuitively feel like I've kind of known this stuff, but it's interesting to start to see it articulated so that I have got something that's workable. So as Stacey said, just leading on from there around the measurables, these are the things that we start to look at, but also they're pretty good indicators whether you've got a pretty good happy workforce or not, which you would already know for some of you who are in HR. So, but the absolute heart of feeling like we're happy at work is that feeling of like we're achieving our potential. In your handouts, you'll see this particular model, and it's called the Performance Happiness Model. And this was put together by Opener in the UK. By the way, this is also based on the work that Jess Price-Jones did. She's the CEO of iOpener in the UK. She's written a book called Maximising Your Psychological Capital. So if you decide you want to read it, there's a lot of in-depth information in that book, but we'll give you the nice express version. But what you can see is, you can see at the heart we have achieving your potential, and then there are the 5 C's sitting around it. And the 5 C's are contribution, conviction, culture, commitment, and confidence. And some of these words you can start to see are sitting up in here. So, but what the research shows is that you could have a team member who's feeling high levels of all those 5 C's, but at the end of the day, we still don't actually get a high level of feeling like I'm achieving my potential if we haven't got pride, trust, and recognition overarching it. So even though I might have the high levels in those 5 C's, I still need high levels of pride, trust, and recognition. So this is where the goal setting fits in. I feel like I'm achieving something. I've got a target and I've got something to work towards. So I've worked with sales teams in the past, and for some where I've seen situations where they haven't had a goal to work towards, we haven't had a budget, what are we actually trying to achieve? Then they might, it might be nice for a couple of days to go, oh, I don't know, the pressure's off, but actually we don't end up engaged in what we're doing. So having goals, clear objectives, feeling like I can raise issues, feeling secure in your job. We've been working with a team lately who are feeling very insecure about their jobs. We see a lot of work with our career counselling work where people go through redundancies and things like that, where we have to help them. Being listened to, certainly the validation, two-way communication. So this is where respect sits, in terms of feeling like I'm contributing, I'm valued, and I'm acknowledged for the contribution that I bring. And being appreciated. So that's contribution. Conviction's about the motivation. So that feeling of wanting to be able to get up and get going. Do you ever have days where you're dragging your feet? You go, I could really do going back to bed today. But conviction is around the motivation side of things. So if you're picking up whether you're not feeling particularly motivated, or you've got a team member that's not particularly motivated, this is where we work, and we can chunk it down into what are the pieces that make up motivation. Feeling like you're resilient. So again, if you have a tough day, do you go, oh, it's okay, we'll be all right. So feeling like you can get through a tough day, and feeling like your work has a positive impact on the world. So for some people that I've worked with in some clients, some organisations aren't always the most ethical organisations, so they might have an impact on people's health. So if they're a smoking company or industrial products that have hurt people's health and things like that, sometimes this can be where it can impact on someone's motivation. The third one you'll see in your handout is called culture. So this is that feeling of relishing your job. Have you ever had that feeling where you've relished your job, where you've gone, I really love this, this is awesome. So this is about liking your colleagues. So someone mentioned here around a friendship was one, yeah? So actually liking the people I work with. Has anyone worked with colleagues that you don't actually like? I've really got to work with that person today. So, but this is where, and quite often it's because that person doesn't have the same values as you, or the same, so this is where culture starts to fit in. How we do things around here, how you go about things isn't how I go about them. So, about things being fair. So are people promoted fairly? Is there a fair chance of being able to progress in the organisation? And feeling like you're in control of your daily activities. So this ties in a little bit around efficiency and effectiveness in terms of do I have any choice in what I do? So if you've ever felt like you've worked back late and you go, I just have to stay back, I have no control over it, I just have to do it, I have to work late. So this is about feeling like you're in control of your work as opposed to your work being in control of you, which is a nice place to be. The next C is commitment. So this is around the long-term commitment, feeling like you're doing something worthwhile, actually being interested in the work that you do. So if you're working in HR and you really like doing the budget side of things and you don't like dealing with people, maybe it's time to have a look at, maybe there's an opportunity in finance or whatever that might be, but actually liking and being interested in the work that you do. Believing in the vision of your organisation. So this, we certainly see we're working with an organisation at the moment where they're still trying to get that vision clear. And certainly that impacts on my feeling of commitment, because what are we actually trying to achieve here? What's my purpose? And feeling the strong bursts of positive emotion. So where Stacey spoke about that, oh cool, that ticked off one, yay, had a little win, this is where this one sits. So these are the things that keep us keeping on. The next one is confidence. So that sense of belief in yourself, feeling like you're getting things done, that nice feeling of, oh good. Do you ever get to the end of the week and you go, I don't know what I got done this week. I really didn't get much done. I just seemed to run around after everybody else. So feeling like you're getting your work done, ticking things off. The self-belief and understanding the red thread of your career. So this is about if you pulled out your resume and you look back through the history and you went right back even to your first job, if you had a first job when you were 15, if you went back, what's the common theme that you see through your resume? So, for example, I had a lady as a client a few weeks ago, and she was managing a high-rise apartment in town. But in previous roles, she had worked in roles, mastered them, and then she turned every role into a training role. She was a really good trainer, and she was feeling really lost in this property management role. There was no progression. There was nobody to train, was the problem. So she was all working on her own. So we started to notice the red thread was that she was a really good trainer. She was really good at mastering things, getting better at it, and then wanting to be able to show other people how to achieve the results she had. So her red thread was teaching people. So if you pull out your resume, have a look at what would be the red thread. Is it that you like working with numbers? Is it that you're good at, you keep getting promoted into management roles? Are you good with people? So what's that red thread? The research also shows us that for those people who are really confident in their jobs, they'll also recommend their job to a friend. So they'll say, oh, you should do what I do. Would you recommend your job if you weren't confident what you're doing? No, probably not. So they were the 5 C's. That's express version. Obviously within this there's a lot of chunks. But overarching is the trust, recognition and pride. And from the beginning I meant to use the language in this particular fashion or this particular order. So trust, recognition and then pride. So what used to happen is when this research was sort of first evolving, we used to say pride, trust and recognition. And I've probably still got a little bit of that habit. But what has happened and evolved is that we've changed it, and I happen to have changed it, and it must be in the order of trust, recognition and pride. The reason being is that for me to feel proud, or for me to feel pride in the work that I do, to be able to say, I'm pretty proud, I've got my organisation's logo on my badge or whatever that might be, I'm proud to say who I work for. But for those people who were able to say that they were proud of the organisation they worked for, they needed to have trust. They needed to trust the people they worked with, and they also needed to be trusted. So not micromanaged. You know how to do your job. And then also the recognition piece. So if I'm not trusted, and if I'm not recognised, if I'm not acknowledged and thanked for the work that I do, then I'm less likely to be proud of the organisation that I work for. So I found that we need to do it in that order. Whilst we have the 5 C's in terms of being able to get into the chunks of what makes up happiness, this is around trust, recognition and pride, and having a look at what are the pieces that make that up. And one of the big things, and you've got the opportunity today, and it's great you've been able to catch up, is around networks. So this is trust, recognition and pride fostered in a social network. all the dots are all people, and it's showing the connection of the dots between who knows who. We've grabbed one of these clusters and pulled it out here. The research shows us that those people who are happier in their jobs have both internal and external networks. So if I'm James, what's the benefit in connecting with Robert?
Access to all his contacts.
Beautiful, I get to leverage off him. So do you ever find sometimes you go, I don't want to go to that networking thing. I'm not a good networker. We hear it a lot with career counselling. I'm not a great networker. I don't like networking. But the benefit absolutely is that James might not be, a particularly great networker, but he's connected to Robert. And Robert is really crucial in that network because he's a connector. So I really encourage you, in terms of pride, trust and recognition, and to encourage you to support your own happiness at work, and also your teams and colleagues. Take a colleague with you, because sometimes they go, oh, I'm not really great at all that stuff. But in the long term, it builds their happiness, the more people they meet. It also means that there are less resources that we're competing for within an organisation. So we have access to other ideas, other suggestions. For example, this super company that I've been working with, one of the projects that they had been looking at was whether they were going to try and go down this path of trying to get younger members. And it's been talked about before, and we seem to focus on older members and superannuation. Every time we try to do this younger member promotion, it just doesn't seem to work. So this person was putting together a campaign, and how are we going to do that? And they said, so it was going to work out to be a lot of money, like millions of dollars, to be able to set up this campaign. But through one of their networks that they had in another super company, which was very similar to theirs, and a couple of others, they went and just had a bit of a chat. And guess what? They came back and said, don't bother, we've done all the feasibility studies. And seriously, it's just such a waste of money, or we've been burnt before, here's everything, all the evidence to suggest. So they saved themselves a huge amount of work and were able to go and work on something that was far more going to prove a much better return on investment for them. So being able to have access to those networks is certainly crucial to your own happiness. And if you're not great at it, connect with people who are really good connectors. So if you'd like to know more about the science of happiness at work, please feel free to get in touch with us via the contact page.